We start by diving straight into the general, and this preference window opens up with 20 different categories and a direct window to each and one of them for any type of adjustment or changes that you want to or need to make. I will go through them just as quickly as possible, but just give you enough to show you what everything actually is, what they're doing, what they mean, and all that stuff. Also giving you a little bit of tips and tricks along the way. Path point and handle size. Currently 5 pixels, and this one controls the very size of the points and handles on masks and shapes. Show tooltips, brief descriptions when just hovering over buttons or options like the tools in the toolbar. The create layers at composition start time automatically places new layers at the beginning of the timeline. You can just unmark them if you want, and they will start at the current time indicator. Useful to unmark if you want to add layers kind of partway through or just at specific points within your timeline without needing to adjust the actual in point afterwards. Switches affect nested comps, and this one applies layer switches like for collapse transformations or motion blur, both for the parent main composition as well as the pre-comps to this one. Just maintaining a bit of consistency throughout all the nested or the pre-composed compositions. Default spatial interpolation to linear. Changes motion keyframes to move in straight lines by default rather than the curved ones. Like whenever you're animating a layer's position between 3 spatial points and just creating a bit of smoother curve. Keeping it on should most likely make your life just a little bit easier most of the times when you're actually animating. Default position properties to separated dimensions. As we've seen before, this one splits the X, Y, and Z properties for just an individual control over each axis. Like for this new text layer, instead of keeping them together as previously, now can be changed individually. If you work a lot and using the value graph a lot in After Effects, this should be quite a must as a default to have them separated. Preserve constant vertex and feather point count when editing masks. It ensures a consistent number of points between the actual vertices and the feather points, just making things a little bit smoother. But at the same time, if you untick it, you can get a little bit more flexibility within the animation, but at the same time risk getting a little bit more perhaps jerky movement or unpredictable behavior. So a bit of balance. We got the pen tool shortcut and toggles between pen and mask feather tools. Let you switch between the pen and mask feather tools just a bit quicker with the shortcut G. Ideal for just speeding up the mask editing a little bit. But unmark it anytime you want to add a few more options like the add, delete, and convert vertex tool. Just giving a bit more flexibility, but perhaps with a bit less speed when editing. Center anchor point in new shape layers. Helpful for just ensuring that the shapes rotate and scale from the very center without having to manually center it each time afterwards. Synchronize time of all related items. Syncs or synchronize the timeline between the current composition and all its nested pre-comps. As for example, when adding a comp to the timeline and going in there, moving the current time indicator to perhaps about 3 seconds, and whenever we're going back again to the actual main comp, this timing and position will sync together. Create split layers above original layer. Places new layers created from split layers above the original layer to the very right or after it. While if you actually unmark it, the new layer will be above to the left or before. Use system color picker. Just instead of using the actual native After Effects one, if I were to mark this going into a color picker, we see the difference from the very default one. Just having a bit of greater flexibility and letting us choose between different categories. And we can even save our favorite colors by dragging and dropping the colored box here in the bottom left corner to this field on the very right, if you will. The dynamic link with After Effects uses project file name with the highest number. Automatically uses just the very most recent version of a dynamically linked type of After Effects project. Just making sure that you're using the very recent one, and untick it if you want a little bit more control. Then just a little play sound when render finishes. We got use system shortcut keys. Allows for your system or After Effects keyboard shortcuts, and you can just hover over the options to be able to see the differences for them both. Enable coach marks. Displays kind of helpful guides or notifications highlighting key features and tips overall. Quite useful whenever you're a beginner and want to learn the whole interface and everything about After Effects, but can be turned off whenever you're a bit more familiar with it. The opening layers with double click, or use Option or Alt to reverse it. On footage layer opens, either the layer panel or source footage panel. Then whenever you're pressing the on comp layer opens, either opens the source composition panel or the layer panel. Choose if you want to so-called open layer panel when double clicking with paint, or Rotobrush and refine edge tools, or if you don't want that. One to go, and we're moving in fast, or at least we're moving in for the next one. If you don't like to see the very home screen every time you're firing up After Effects, disable it over here, giving you one click less at a time. The show system compatibility issues, when enabled, this option, it pretty much just alerts you if there might be some type of potential problem with the software or the hardware related to the performance in After Effects. So might just be good to help prevent any type of technical problems. We have a few different options here, both for repair and preference management. But as it actually says very clearly exactly what each means and what it's doing here, I guess there's no point for me to just repeat it all. So just check it out by yourself. And if you tried all options, still having issues, hit the blue text at the bottom saying please file a bug report if you prefer. Where the adaptive resolution limit, adjust the playback resolution to just improve or help with the performance, to all the way down for just a bit smoother and a lot faster playbacks. But yeah, a little bit worse quality resolution, of course, as a full quality for just being lossless. Useful for just lowering any time you're working with really complex compositions, just massive projects, or you have heavy effects, or just perhaps a little bad smoky computer overall. Then lower this one. Manipulate 3D render reduces both resolution and quality, or just render quality. For the show internal wireframes, we read that it, quoting, shows bounding box wireframes for components of collapsed pre-compositions and per character 3D text layers. I haven't seen any difference here at all, either having it on or off, so I just keep it on. Adjust viewer quality and zoom just between more accurate, or that except for cached preview, and you got a faster one. Same goes for color management quality. Composition switches, which automatically enable frame blending and motion blur rendering. Whenever using it for a layer, it will also enable the corresponding type of composition switches. Mute audio when preview is not real time, just meaning it won't play when slowing down a clip or kinda stuttering and lagging whenever being unmarked. Catch frame when idle. We went through this one before under the very preview part, but adjust the settings anywhere between 2 and 15 seconds. Choose to cache frames as around or from current time and from start of range. And that cache range we might change between the work area extended by current time, or we can do the work area or just the whole entire duration. And as we actually are in here, there is a type of hidden, or it's actually called secret tab within the settings here, as we are with the caching and in the preview. We might want to check it out. So just go out from the settings again, close it down, then navigate back to the previous settings. And just before we click, holding down Shift at the same time as we are clicking, giving us this new little secret tab to make a few adjustments if we want, and some that we probably shouldn't. but disable the layer cache while also being able to purge every X amount of frames during make movie, and you can even ignore sequence rendering errors, but with a danger warning. So you probably shouldn't touch it, but this one and the other options or settings, now you know they are there if you for some reason need to adjust anything. Down to the display, just having a motion path going from one position to another with a few different stops and keyframes in there between. Adjust to no motion path at all, showing all keyframes, no more than X amount of keyframes, or set to a maximum time frame based on 30 FPS. We can disable thumbnails in the project panel, which will hide the image or thumbnail over here as you see. Then show rendering progress in info panel and flowchart. We got hardware accelerate composition, layer, and also the footage panels that are for any previews to just improve that performance a little bit to pump up the speed. And the last one here under display to show both timecode and frames in the timeline panel. Whenever using any type of import, you might prefer either all still footage with a length of composition as a standard or just to a set time if you want. We get a sequence footage, meaning whenever you are importing a kind of series of different footage, this will be treated as a whole connected sequence together, which by default is set to the 30 FPS, but can be changed to pretty much any number you like. So, report missing frames, notify us if there is any type of gaps within the footage. So if you import some footage for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and say you only have the 1, 2, 4, 5 missing the 3, then this will give you a little bit of alert or heads up that there might be some footage missing. Verify individual files, which checks every file in a sequence just if there is any type of missing data or any type of error. So it might be quite valuable to have checked on whenever you are importing from an external hardware or any other type of network, then keep it on. We can improve our playback and scrubbing performance by enable hardware accelerated decoding, which enables or uses your GPU to be able to decode some different type of video formats just a little bit more faster with more power. Automatic footage reloading will update your footage automatically whenever it's being changed without needing to re-import everything again. And you can set it to reload all footage, only on non-sequence footage, like perhaps videos or images, or just whack it off, turn it off completely if you don't want it. Then the so-called indeterminate media NTC refers to media like image sequences without an actual embodied timecode. And you may choose either the drop frame, which adjusts timecode to just align with a real-world time, or we got a non-drop frame, which just counts every frame continuously. Some different drop-down options on how we interpret the unlabeled alpha as, meaning any type of video footage that has an transparency or an alpha. Whenever we're dragging in multiple footages to our project panel, either we separate them as normal footage, composition, or comp that retain layer styles. If we ever prefer rendering with a kind of maximum ceiling of either the file size or the actual amount of different files within a specific type of folder, for example, when you're doing some rendering for a specific type of movie, either set the top one, the segment sequences at, and just the X amount of files, or if you just need a type of size roof for maximum, then just tick the one below. The use default file name and folder setting automatically gives each composition a unique file name anytime you put it into the actual render queue, and it will also keep the same output folder until it's being changed. To speed up video exports, you can always enable the ProRes hardware accelerated encoding, but if you ever experiences any type of issues or crashes with this type of enhanced performance normally, then try to untick it to perhaps fix that problem. The audio block duration setting will determine the length of each audio segment or block whenever rendering. Overall, this section was perhaps a little bit more for that, you would say now, old school DVDs and stuff, so perhaps not really super relevant anymore, but they are there. They're very useful grids and guides, so we can do the grid by color, style, either as normal lines, we got the dashed lines, or on dots if you prefer. Set different grid line depending on X amount of pixels, or subdivisions as the very boxes inside. The proportional grid is now set to so-called rule of thirds, but you can change it to any number, both the horizontal and the vertical lines. Then set the color of the guides if you want, as the lines we're dragging out from the rulers in the composition, with the style of normal lines, or we can go for dashed lines if we like the look of that. If we need to fine-tune this safe margins guide, it's adjustable with action safe, the title safe, and also the center cut action safe and the center cut title safe. A little bit depending on your needs and preferences for different type of specific format with TV or screens to whatever you need. Under the labels, we may want to change all our default colors for each specific type of layer or footage. At the very top, the colors for markers, both for comments and segments underneath, and just the overall label colors. When enabling the disk cache, we may possibly regulate the very maximum size in here, whereas After Effects just saves down frames or previews to your actual hard drive, so it doesn't have to take from the RAM every time you need to do some type of rendering or previews. So it just helps speeding up the process a little bit, and especially if your RAM memory is quite low, this speeds it up a little bit. Choose a folder for it and make sure that it's a fast hard drive or a separate fast SSD disk. Conformed media cache stores adjusted media files to match the project settings. The database stores file information and the cache holds actual media files. Using clean database and cache removes conformed or indexed media files by marking the XMP metadata, whereas metadata is added to the media files, improving the whole integration with other type of Adobe programs, for example with Adobe Audition or Premiere Pro. So it just makes it a little bit easier to track and organize different type of files, either for yourself or when you're collaborating with others in team projects, for example. The very last option here automatically creates markers in your composition timeline just based on the XMP metadata found in the imported footage. Enabling the Mercury transmit lets you send video previews to an external monitor, and thus allowing a bit for easier viewing on a separate display, which shows and configures in this middle window over here. We got disable video output when in the background, stops sending any type of frames to the monitor when After Effects isn't actually active, so just saves a little bit of system resources. With the video preview during render queue output, let you see all the real-time render preview if that's something you need on that external monitor when you're rendering. We may want to use color for layer handles and paths and related tabs. So whenever creating multiple different masks, we can just cycle mask colors to be able to change through the different type of colors for each mask, plus also deciding to use contrast to help distinguish them a little bit more easily when just have a bunch of them perhaps. Gradients for just quite subtle or small type of nice shading. We might also adjust the overall brightness. We can decide whether to affect the label colors or not. And also brightness adjustments for the interactive controls and the focus indicators seen on the sample bottom here. One here, the new project loads template, will allow setting a project template, which automatically loading every time you're starting a new project. Underneath, we can set our folder and name it for saving all our solids within this one. If we ever want to redirect to just a previous one, right-click a folder in the project panel and then just select solids folder. Next up, a bit of a lifesaver and just super nice rescue overall when we forget ourselves to hit that save. So choose a time frame for saving and I guess a maximum that you're not way too painfully by risk losing. Save when starting render queue, plus we got maximum project versions. So lastly here, for all those autosave files, either next to project or put them at anywhere a custom location where you prefer. Our total installed RAM in this video, we're distributing or kind of spreading out how much memory shall be used for After Effects and Adobe applications compared to other applications on your computer. And in show memory usage details, we're getting just a little bit more detailed view of how the memory shall be spread, how we prefer to spread it out. A tip here could be to always try to use even numbers when you're trying to distribute the RAM between After Effects and other applications, because it's said or perhaps rumored that After Effects should work better when you're working with even numbers. So might be a tip that's actually worth checking out. As with here, for example, using 4 and 28. Lastly, we got some performance settings under the enable multiple frame rendering and what percentage of the GPU shall be reserved for other applications. If you want some more tips on how you can actually improve the performance in After Effects, head over to the good old user guide. And we scroll all the way down to under memory, storage, performance, and then improve performance. We got device class, now core audio, controls which audio driver After Effects uses. We got audio default output as a system default or any other preferable option. Clock source internal for audio synchronization. We got an I/O buffer size, currently set as the very default at 512 samples. We may set the sample rate at standard 48,000 Hz, or we can lower it to 44,100, or just ramp it up all the way up to the maximum of 96,000 for that optimal audio quality. We got attempt to force hardware to document sample rate, which ensures that the audio hardware just matches up with actual project sample rate, thus just avoiding or help avoiding some playback issues. Finally, some settings for your computer audio system. The audio output mapping lets us adjust between the left and right with the speakers for system default. The type settings, you might change the font menu preview size between the current small, or you can just whack it up all the way to extra large if you like. Then set how many numbers of recent fonts to display, anywhere between 0 and up to 15. Normally, we need to, or at least I need to, restart After Effects to be able to see these changes to take place. So if it doesn't take place directly, just restart and see if it works. Last of all, tick this box to not get any warnings about any type of missing fonts each time you open up project. Allow scripts to write files and access network. Enable this only if you're only using trusted scripts. Otherwise, it could be a potential security risk if not managed properly. Enable the JavaScript debugger for any type of troubleshooting with issues for the scripts. Warn user when executing files, prompts a warning before running external scripts. Keeping this one enabled is a quite good idea for a security reason. Choose to show or hide the scripting progress dialog. We got the expression pick whip, writes compact English, writing expressions in a little bit more compact and readable format whenever we have it turned on. If necessary, show warning banner when project contains expression errors, if you want. The next, some specific adjustments for the very expression editor. We got font size anywhere between 4 and 24. Then the syntax highlighting, which will color different parts of the code, show line numbers, show indent guides, and with highlighting matching braces, just seeing the difference. If I just type beside this text a bracket without actually marking it versus having it marked. Now showing a green color when complete or matching, and red when deleting one for a type of mismatch. So green for right, red for wrong. Have this marked to automatically insert braces or indent with the one below. Folding popping up here in the middle as off, arrow, plus and minus, circle tree, or square. The word wrap option just controls how text is displayed reaching the edge of the window. Set to none, where the text will stay on one continuous line, where just as potentially requiring you to do some horizontal scrolling. We got the word as the text wraps at the end of a word, maintaining readability without just cutting the words off. Or character, which breaks words if needed, ensuring no text exceeds the window's very width. Word should be the most user-friendly here and the best readable for the text, as it's not breaking up the actual word and preventing from this kind of horizontal scrolling. Use tabs and select the width. I might do a backspace unidents and thus removing the unidents in front, or tick it off, just removing the space in the very back. We have the inline errors or an autocomplete, which is this little box with some auto word suggestions popping up. Then at the very bottom, just check out any type of multiple themes, either as a preset or just change to a custom one and save it. Moving on to the 3D preferences, the very first option is for the keyboard shortcuts, being able to just quickly navigate between the cameras using 1, 2, and 3, while using the 4, 5, and 6 for the transform gizmos. Very useful. Having marked this activate option, the left, middle, right mouse click for camera navigation will deactivate temporary wireframe mode. Camera manipulation point may be set to none, indicator, or directional indicator. For camera navigation dolly, just tweaking the mouse scroll wheel behavior to magnify the composition. The dolly camera or reverse dolly camera. Then it's drag direction to either normal or the reverse. And we're rounding it all off with an empty 3D cache to just free up some good space. And the very last preference and final category, giving us this option to automatically enable notifications when you add a composition to the render queue.